For most, your home is exactly what it should be. It's safe, familiar, your sanctuary away from the outside world. But for some, when the lights go out and it all goes quiet, their homes just don't feel like they should. Smoke alarms blaring night after night, even when there's no sign of danger. Something triggering motion sensors, even when you know that you're home alone. But perhaps worst of all, getting that unmistakable, uneasy feeling like you're being watched, only to find out that you most definitely are. And so when something starts making itself known, is it a warning or a way of forcing you out? So our first story comes from Jacob, whose experience left a lasting, terrifying impression on him decades later. My personal experiences took place on a street in Accrington. I was around 7 or 8 years old, and I'm 36 now. Still, to this day, walking past the house sends a shudder through me. Almost 30 years later, and you still get the heebie-jeebies from a house. That is never a good sign. Well, to begin with my worst one. Quick layout of the gaff, open front door, stairs straight in front of you, door to the right is a living room, left side dining room to the kitchen. It's a terraced house. Well, I was playing hide and seek with my 3 brothers, 2 older and 1 younger. I hid in a bedding box at the bottom of my parents' bed. It was more like a metal trunk, and it had a lock in the middle for a padlock, but the top bit of that lock was missing, and then 2 latches either side of the middle. One lockable latch was missing, the other worked, but it was quite a tough latch, so it was always open. Probably for the best, don't want to end up locked out of the thing entirely. The house, it was a weird setup. The whole upstairs had a shared bathroom with 2 doors out of it, each going to a bedroom. Each bedroom then had that bathroom door and a door to the top of the stairs, which was a tiny landing area. But the bedrooms also shared a door to each other too. Yeah, that does sound rather weird. That's a strange door to bedroom ratio. Because there was only 1 latch on the box, I made sure that it was up, so it wouldn't latch down and lock me in. I was there waiting away in my hiding spot, even lifting the lid by a tiny bit to scope the vicinity. My brother ran into the room, over the bed, not the box, and he went through to the bathroom. Seems like you got a decent hiding spot then. Nobody can find you. After hearing time up, I go to get out. But no way could I lift the lid of the big box. I was wriggling, nothing. Then I was on my back, pushing the lid up with all of my strength. And I got the lid nearly all the way up, but it slammed back down. So I had to scream and cry. Being 7, 8 years old, that is the only natural step. I'd have been right there with you, screaming and crying. Mum and Dad came running up like, "What's up? What's going on?" I said, "Someone's on the box and I can't get out." I'm guessing they were able to extract you from said box at some point, but that does sound like a terrifying core memory forming moment for a kid. So obviously your initial thought is the latch has come down and you've got locked in the box. But for you to be able to open the lid to peep out, and then also to heave with all of your might and open the actual lid, only for it to slam back down on you, something really didn't want you getting out of that box. But Jacob does share a little bit more here. The taps used to turn on upstairs by themselves. Our dog wouldn't go upstairs. He blatantly refused to go up. My eldest brother says that he used to see a shadow figure in the corner of the bedroom. We later found out that the previous occupier died from falling down the stairs. And there it is. Maybe he was trying to scare you all into staying downstairs. If you're all scared of the upstairs, you won't need the staircase anymore, and then you won't be able to fall down the stairs. It's keeping you all safe. Could choose less terrifying ways to convey that message, surely. But I suppose the ghosts have to use what they've got, a little bit like this next story from Tracy. Indiana, USA. It was around 1981 and I was 8 years old. We'd moved into a mobile home park. Everything seemed normal, other than the neighbours saying things like, "Oh, you're living in that one there? Yeah, it's hard keeping neighbours for that one." They wouldn't tell us why, just welcome to the neighbourhood. Thank you so much, neighbours. It's like they're telling you it's haunted straight off the bat without telling you. That, or it's just got some expensive damage or something, and that's why people keep moving out. Either way, not off to a good start. One night I was watching TV while my mum, dad, and my grandma, who was my dad's mum and living with us, was sitting around the table, just talking. I was watching a TV show called That's Incredible. I can't believe I still remember it. Anyway, out of the corner of my eye, near our window that's next to the TV, I saw a misty form hovering near the curtain. I yelled out, "Mom, Dad, an angel! I see an angel!" My parents asked me, "What did you say? What do you mean you saw an angel?" They showed me a picture of an angel they had hanging on the wall, and I said, "Kind of like that, but no wings." That's when things started happening. When you can pinpoint exactly whatever it was moved in with you like that, lovely. Our fire alarms would go off for no reason. They didn't even have batteries in them, but at a certain time every morning, early morning, before anyone was awake, they would go off. This went on for a week. Dad, getting tired of it, threw them out in the yard. Then one day, a month or so later, my grandma was in the bathroom getting ready for work. For some reason I was asleep on the couch and my parents were on a mattress on the floor instead of all sleeping in our rooms. I guess there was a lot of activity going on that I don't remember that freaked my parents out. Yeah, for them to be sleeping on the floor out there with you instead of in their own bedroom. My grandma, as I said, was getting ready for work, and my dad heard grandma saying, "Tracy, wait a moment and you can come in when I'm done." I said, "Wait a moment." My dad asked, "Mom, what's going on?" She replied, "Tracy is trying to get into the bathroom. She's standing in the hallway watching me dress." "You say Tracy's doing what now?" He said, "Mum, Tracy's here on the couch asleep." Grandma goes, "Well, who's this little girl standing here looking at me?" Remarkably calm, Tracy's grandma. Commendable bravery there. My mum would also see a tall, dark form of a man wearing a hat standing in their bedroom doorway watching them sleep. She shook my dad, but by the time he sat up, the figure had vanished, possibly starting to see why they left their own bedroom. We noticed also that none of the neighbour children would come into our yard. They would stand there and call out instead if they wanted me to come out to play with them. One night, my parents and I were sitting in the living room and my parents were talking about moving. We had our family Bible on the coffee table and it suddenly slid across the table and fell on the floor. My mum got very scared and said, "That's it, we are moving now. I cannot stay here another night. I'm taking Tracy and going to my mum's." My dad was about to stand up when he fell back in the chair and he looked at my mum wide-eyed and said, "I can't move. Something is preventing me from standing up." His face, however, did not look like my dad. I cannot describe what or who it was, but it was like something was trying to take over my dad. I think I'm fully understanding why no one wants to live in this mobile home. Finally, my mum yelled, "For the love of God, let us leave. We're leaving right now." We fled the mobile home that night, going to my mum's mother's house, and I never went back to the mobile home. My parents went back and got all of the items. Many years later, when I was around 16, she asked if I remembered living in that mobile home. I said somewhat. She goes, "Do you remember that little girl that you would talk about and talk to and play with in your room?" I said no. She told me that she would hear me talking to a little girl and that when I'd get a snack, I'd have to have another. One for myself and for my friend. Mum said she was cleaning out my closet one day in that mobile home and she found cookies, candy and chips and she asked me what I was doing and I told her it's for the little girl that lives in there. "The little girl that lives in your closet?" "No, I don't have a closet anymore. That is not a recognised storage space." What? We never had any experiences ever again, but I did become a paranormal investigator because of living in the mobile home in Indiana. I did find out from a historian that at one time, the land that the mobile home community was on was farmland back in the early 1900s. It was owned by a family, a husband and wife and their 3 children. One night, the farmhouse caught fire, killing the father and the little girl. The mother and the other 2 were able to escape. I'm sorry to say that I do not remember the name of the family that had owned the land. Could it have been the little girl that my grandmother had seen? And was it the farmer that my mum saw? And were they setting off the fire alarms to warn us about what could happen or did happen? Wow, for it to all make sense like that at the end with the fire alarms? Poor little farmer Hatman was just checking in on your parents, making sure that they were okay in the middle of the night. Bless him. But back across the Atlantic, this time in Scotland, Paul's story has some eerie similarities. 3 years ago, I moved to the north of the town into a downstairs flat. I had to take the flat that I was offered as I'd rejected a previous one a year before, and there's at least a 5-year wait for a flat down in Perthshire. I had to move as the neighbourhood I'd lived in had become a bad place. While moving home, and even a few days afterwards, I knew that living in the new flat wasn't for me, and I regretted taking it. But as I said above, I never really had much choice, as my housing application would have been suspended for 6 months due to 2 rejections. Something felt off about living in there, like I was being watched or there was something in the room with me. The first few nights after moving in, I slept in the living room as I was still waiting for the bedroom carpet to be put down. The first few nights, I never really slept with it being in new surroundings, but I noticed my Alexa changed volume during the night and would randomly begin playing the radio. I mean, Alexa does sometimes do weird things, but just deciding to stick on the radio or something, not a quirk I've experienced with it. Even after moving to my bedroom, I'd come through to the living room and the radio was always playing old songs. Using Shazam on my phone and Google, the songs came from the 1940s. I checked my Alexa app and there were no settings for it to play the radio during the night. Over the first few weeks, when I did sleep, I kept having dreams about a woman. The same woman who wore a green dress, and several times in the dreams, there was a fire. I began waking up at the same time every morning, 2:30 a.m. Normally, I go to bed between 11 p.m. and 12 a.m, but it didn't matter what time I went. I'd keep waking up at the same time. Due to the hallway being bigger than my previous flats, I bought 2 spray air fresheners and set them to spray every 2 hours. The air fresheners also have a sensor on them, and they go off seconds after walking past them. And we all learned about how haunted they can be after the last listener story episode. Lying in bed at night when trying to fall asleep or being awake during the night, I could hear them going off and spraying. Not every 2 hours, but frequently. So I grabbed my phone to check, and it was every few minutes to 20 minutes. It was constant. I did change the timer on it to every 4 hours, but it still continued, along with what sounded like very loud footsteps. I got up to check a few times over several nights in those first few weeks, and they always stopped when I looked. There was never anything there. But when you know that the air fresheners are being triggered more often than their timing says that they should be, no, don't like that. Other strange things began happening too, like the kitchen, hall, and bathroom lights being on in the morning when they'd been turned off at night. One night, when coming out of the bathroom after brushing my teeth, I noticed a dark shadow go past very quickly. This freaked me out, and I checked the whole house to be sure that there wasn't anything or anyone there. Not comfortable with this level of escalation going on. Then the strangest thing began happening. Whenever I'd be in the shower, or I'd let the shower run to heat up, the smoke alarm would go off. Almost every time I checked the bathroom window was slightly open to let the steam out, the fan was on, and the steam had nowhere else to go. I got an electrician out to check everything, and he said everything was fine, there were no faults, and not to worry. He couldn't explain it. I mean, I know some smoke alarms can be ridiculously sensitive, but yeah, that seems more than just that. And to have it verified by an electrician too. Around this time, a friend sadly passed away from cancer, and I thought maybe it was his ghost playing tricks, as he was a wind-up merchant and loved pranking people when he was alive. Then one night, I came home from the shop and was soaked to the skin with rain. So I let my shower run to heat up and went to put a towel in the bathroom. As I turned around from my linen cupboard, I saw a woman standing in my hallway. She wasn't solid, she was see-through with dark hair. She had a dress on too, similar to the one I'd seen in my dreams. Then she completely disappeared. It was freaky. I checked the whole place again to make sure I was the only person in the building. My door was locked with the chain on it. It's just not something you really want to see when you're home alone at doors locked, is it? I mentioned to a friend who lives across the road what happened and said to her that this had been happening constantly since I'd moved in. My friend, who had lived in the neighbourhood for 10 years, mentioned that no one really stays in my flat for long and people always stay between 3 months to a year max. She thought it was because of the upstairs neighbour, but after telling her about what I was experiencing, she said that she had seen some things in her house, and her youngest son, who was 2 at the time, mentioned seeing a man, but no one else could see him. One day my friend took her youngest son over while dropping off shopping for me, and he wouldn't come in. He pointed and refused to set foot inside, saying about a scary lady. My friend then mentioned that the whole area where my flat and her house is used to be part of the old barracks, which housed soldiers and pilots and most people who lived and worked at the airfield here in Montrose. Ooh, and as we've already found out on this channel, Montrose said to be a super haunted place, at least by the sounds of it. I even had a lot of comments come through after I put that video out about phantom aircraft sounds all over the town and things like that. We then found out that there was a fire where my flat is and a woman had died in it. We can't find any records of said fire, but it's a story which has been told throughout the years and passed down. My granny mentioned her dad talking about a fire there and a woman disappearing in it. I thought that that explained the dreams that I was having. As time has gone on, the haunting still continues, but it's not as bad as it was when I first moved in. Things still happen, like my Alexa playing the radio randomly, lights being on when they've definitely been switched off, and seeing a dark shadow figure going past in the hallway, whether I'm coming out of the bathroom or in the kitchen. And most common, the air fresheners going off in the hallway during the night. Surely that's going to cost you a fortune nowadays. A few times there's been drawers in the kitchen open when I've gone through in the morning. Total Sixth Sense vibe. I had a friend visiting and staying the night a few weeks ago, and she mentioned how often the air freshener was going off. And she could hear the footsteps in the hallway too. I slept in the living room and heard them as well, and was woken up by my Alexa changing volume and itself. But it has eased from what it was. We often joke that I've stayed here longer than anyone else in recent years, so the ghost has gotten used to me or has grown to like my taste in music. I mean, I know you didn't have much of a choice, but well done for sticking it out. Possibly a bit of a battle of the wills there too, like who's gonna back down first? Maybe the ghostly lady just loves the smell of fresh linen air fresheners, bless her. And to her mind, finally, someone's just leaving the Alexa on for her to listen to her tunes, rather than just running away screaming and disturbing the peace. She's been through enough. Although for this next story, I feel like running away screaming is the only option that you would have. Lincolnshire, when I was in my late teens in the mid-1980s. Members of my family moved into a house on the edge of a small village, and I went over late on the Friday afternoon after work to help them decorate over the weekend. On that evening, we were painting and decorating till about 8:30 p.m, before we had some food and chilled out, chatting and having a laugh. At around 10:30, we were all very tired and we called it a night. I went up to the room I was staying in, which was a fairly long back bedroom, but had not been decorated since the mid-60s by the looks of it. I had a camp bed to sleep on, and had bought a novel with me to read and lay reading with a portable lamp. At around 2:30 a.m, I woke up freezing and realised that the lamp was still on and the book was on the floor. That is the only way to finish a successful late night reading session. But also 2:30 a.m. again, like Paul. Are these ghosts just getting earlier and earlier? I thought it was always 3 a.m. That's what horror movies would have us believe. I went to reach over to turn the lamp off, but in the corner of the room was an old lady, dressed all in black, white hair in a bun, very pale looking. She had half-cut, wire-framed glasses and piercing blue eyes. And she did not look happy, but just sat there, glaring at me. I was so stunned that I just froze for a second or two, but then she blinked. I did the brave bloke thing. I dived back under the duvet and hid my head under it. I waited for a minute or so to convince myself that I must have imagined it, as I didn't believe in ghosts. Because just for the record, of course the duvet is going to protect you from anything. Demons, ghosts, murderers who have broken into your house, the duvet will save you from everything. I then decided to have another look. She was still there, and looking even more angry. Yeah, no, don't like that. I slid back under the duvet and tried to lay as flat as I could, and the room got colder and colder. But somehow, I eventually fell back to sleep. The next morning, the lamp was still on, and the book was still where it had fallen, but no sign of any spooky old lady, and the room felt warmer. Later that day, I made excuses about forgetting that I'd got something to do, and had just remembered, so I needed to leave. I didn't tell them, as they were a young couple, and I didn't want to scare them or think that I'd lost the plot. There was no way I was staying there another night, though. A few years later, at a family gathering, the couple by then had moved into another house, but were at the party. I was getting some food and a drink when I overheard the woman talking about the spook that she'd seen on a regular basis when they lived in that house. I stopped her and described what I'd seen a few years before in that house. She said it matched perfectly. I mean, at least you can be somewhat comforted in the fact that she wasn't just angry at you. Although I do think that you made the absolute right call by noping straight out of that situation. One night is enough, thank you very much, but no thanks. Having an angry ghost lady glaring at me is about my limit of helping out family anyway. But sometimes you can't just make your excuses and leave, because whether you like it or not, you are sharing your own home with something that you can't explain. The house was built in 1949 to help accommodate a boom in car manufacturing and the need to house the factory workers. It's a roughly 1,200 square foot house in a Cape Cod-like style. The main floor of the house is about 900 square feet, with the attic and basement making up the other 300 square feet. Pretty small. Single bathroom, 2 bedrooms, kitchen, dining room, and living room. Is it just me? But I have absolutely no context of square footage. You could say to me that this house is 1,000 square foot, and I'd be like, yeah, impressive. I got no idea. The house is a quiet residential street near a major intersection with a nice large park behind the backyard. It's important to note that the area was made into a neighbourhood with a large park because the area used to be a swamp and the park floods every spring until early summer. It was also an area known to be the place where people used to dump trash because it was an undeveloped swampy area. Lovely. My dad's parents bought the house around 1964. My dad lived there with them until my parents married in 1968. After that, it was my grandparents until my grandfather passed away in a hospital in 1984. My grandmother lived there alone until 1987 when a few things happened. The first was she was mugged on her front lawn after parking in her driveway. The second was she was afraid to leave the house. And the third is that my parents and my grandmother decided that she would move to an apartment and we would move into the house. But first of all, what a horrendous thing for your grandmother to go through, being mugged on her own driveway. I don't blame her for being scared to go outside after that. At the time, we lived in a townhouse, which I believe some parts of the US and world might refer to as row houses. I think it's like a terraced house too. It was a touch bit bigger than where we were moving to, but only my younger sister and I would be sharing a room, and not all 3 of us in one room. So in October 1987, we celebrated our last Halloween at the townhouse and moved into Grandma's house. For context, I was 10 years old. Prior to moving into that house, I did not know nor remember caring about ghosts or the supernatural. The following are the encounters I had with the supernatural in that house. One of the first nights I remember in the house, I saw what I can only describe as a troll. Okay, we're starting off strong. My dad built his bunk beds. Mine was about 6 foot off the floor, and from the head of my bed, I could see the archway between the living room and the dining room. I was in bed and just woke up. I think it was at some point in the middle of the night. I'm not entirely sure. No idea why I did. I was 10. I happened to look out towards the living room. Moving from the dining room toward the living room was a tall, lumbering figure. Oh no, what? It was inside the house? It was shadowy, had arms down to its knees, and appeared to be bald. It disappeared as it crossed into the living room. Could my 10-year-old brain have created that image? Absolutely. Could it have just been brought on by the stress of moving? Sure, I don't really know. I just know that I never saw it again. For me, the rest of the 1980s were a small series of concussions, so my memory of anything haunted is murky until about 1992. I do recall that the house never felt empty or quiet, even when you were the only one home. It always felt crowded, as if you were being watched. Also, the bedroom my little sister and I shared had a corner that was always shadowed. It always felt off. And no poster I put there did not look creepy, even a simple yin-yang. It also did not help when my grandfather built an addition to the back of the house and left the window. If anything, that just helped to the creepy vibe. Yeah, an internal window like that? Weirdly enough, I completely understand what you mean about it being creepy. I have no further explanation for why I feel that way though. I do remember one thing from maybe 1989 when my younger sister had a longtime friend over. This friend bought a Ouija board. I may have decided to be mean and force the planchette to spell out that said friend was haunted. They put the board away. Sorry, that is a little bit hilarious though. I bet they still have trauma from that encounter if they never figured out that you did it. Moving on. From about 1990 to 2009, these are the things that I recall happening. In the early 90s, my mum, little sister, and I all had our names called. It was usually like this. I'd be in my room and hear my mum call for me. I would go to where I knew she was and ask what she wanted. She would say that she didn't call for me, but it was clearly her voice. The same thing would happen to my younger sister and to my mom, with either mine or my sister's voice calling her. There were many times that something mimicking our voices would run us in circles until we started ignoring it. I've heard enough creepy Appalachian stories to be absolutely terrified by the notion of a mimic. No thank you. We did have dogs, and because they had a habit of getting into the trash, we didn't have the space for a trash cupboard, and so it sat with a lid by the kitchen doorway. We'd close the pocket door to the kitchen to keep them out. I liked to stay up late to read or listen to TV and feel like I was intruding on everyone else. Or I watched something I taped off the TV. No DVRs back then, so we recorded from TV to VHS tapes and watched back. Not quite every night, but close enough. You would hear the water turn on, dishes rattling, cupboards opening and closing, and what amounted to it sounding like someone was in the kitchen doing the dishes in the noisiest way possible. I wish I could say I was brave and went to inspect. I was not. Often I would either go to bed or pretend I was not hearing what I was hearing and continue on. That is entirely fair. The stairs to the attic would also creak. It doesn't sound ghostly, but the stairs would creak as if someone were walking down them, but there'd be no weight like a person. Just each step creaking and groaning as if someone were walking down the stairs. Then for about 15 minutes or so, you'd hear nothing before the stairs would suddenly start creaking as if someone was heading back up them. This was most common when no one had the attic as their bedroom and or the pocket door was closed. Typically, you can tell when there is actual weight behind landing on the steps, indicating a person, because the creaking was a bit louder and you could hear the footsteps. But actual footsteps never accompanied the unexplained creaks. It was odd, I guess. I hated going to the basement. The laundry was in the basement, and basements are inherently creepy. I agree. Access to the basement was through the kitchen, and we had to walk from the kitchen door to the back of the kitchen and to the left, then down 2 steps to a landing, door to the outside, and then down the stairs. It was awkward. At the bottom of the stairs was a recreation room to the right and the laundry to the left, with the furnace/hot water heater, and then a small workspace for repairing things. I quite often felt as if someone was staring out of that recreation room and would also get that sudden terror that basically says, "Do not look this way, or you will see something that you don't want to see," feeling. So yes, I ran up those stairs well into my 20s and sometimes did not stop until I hit the dining room. And sometimes it absolutely felt like something was right on my heels. Those sorts of feelings are the worst though. Your natural instinct is to look so you know what's going on, but some sort of overriding part of your brain says no, don't, it's not worth it. In the early 2000s, I had to ask my mom if the dogs were inside or outside, because a large, black, furry dog, slightly like a very fluffy chow chow, came barreling at me from the addition we called the back room to almost the living room. Our dogs were outside at the time. Also, the house had hardwood floors and there was no sound of the dog's nails tapping on the floor. I did fall into the table though. The dog was that real and running full tilt at me. But it was more like it was happy to see me and not intending to scare. That is the best thing I have read all day. I will take the disappearing troll and the pot washing ghost. You mean to say that this house comes with a ghost puppy? Because mine has left me for today. He got too hot on the sofa and didn't want to come back. One of the last things to happen to me in that house was whoever was there decided to poke me in the ribs while I was walking on the treadmill. I did 100% nope it up the stairs and never walked on the treadmill again. Outside, sure. On that treadmill in the basement, no. Not the first ghost to touch me. My grandma did something similar when I visited her grave. I was not a fan then either. Ooh, so was it possibly your grandma doing a bit of PTing from beyond the grave? Keep your back straight when you're on the treadmill, proper form. Throughout my time living there, we did not have many instances of things disappearing, apparitions, things like that. Just lots of little things that were pretty tame when compared to other hauntings. Also, my mom did admit a few years ago that she could hear the kitchen noises too and often thought it was a cocktail party. Why she thought teenagers would be having a cocktail party in the dark and in the middle of the night, I have no idea. But I did have a ring I wore often. It fell on the floor of my bedroom and rolled under the bed. I spent several years looking for it. I finally found it in a box that had nothing to do with jewellery months after we moved into our new house. That was wild. At least it did come with you to the new house. We did live with my parents until our daughter was 5. In 2009, we bought a house and then moved in with our children. The house we have lived in for the last 16 years is not haunted. We sold my grandparents' house in 2024 for many, many reasons, but the number one reason was that no one lived there anymore. A family member had previously lived there with their family for a number of years. Let's just say that the state that the place was left in was such a state that the ghost left. The one piece I left out about the house is that it is across the street from the backside of a funeral home. What a detail to slip in right at the end there, Tracy. But now we know the only thing that you need to do if you're being tormented by a ghost is just lower your living standards so low that even the ghost gets fed up. I mean, when multiple family members reported hearing noises in the kitchen, sounded like someone who took pride in their home anyway. But wow, Tracy's house, creepy, yes, unsettling, most definitely, but how strange, seeing those things, being knocked back by a dog who wasn't actually there. That is utterly fascinating. I wonder whether anything otherworldly moved back in once the owners cleaned up the place. But a massive thanks to Jacob, Paul, Darren, and the 2 Tracys for sending in their stories. It is so interesting how you hear of so many similar stories, especially if there's possibly been a fatal fire. And I mean, interesting, but not surprising, really. Not even getting into the physical trauma of a fire being an awful way to go, but the emotional trauma of going through something like that. Your home, the one place where you're supposed to feel safe, becoming the place that you're trapped inside with flames and smoke all around you. So I absolutely wouldn't be shocked if something stayed behind after that. And even after the building is cleared and something else is built in its place. And then some sort of entity, or maybe even just energy, wants to make sure that no one has to go through what they went through. It's very sad and just utterly heartbreaking, but also comforting in a way. Just don't be standing in my bedroom staring at me while I'm in bed. That I will never be a fan of. But if you have a ghost story, something strange that you couldn't explain, a haunted house that you grew up in, anything, and you'd like to share it for a chance for me to tell it in one of these episodes, please do email me at hello@don'tscareclaire.com or use the form pinned in the comments. I would honestly love to hear about your experiences. But anyway, if you enjoyed this collection of stories as told to me by the real people who experienced them, then please do give the video a like. And if you enjoy hearing stories like this, make sure that you subscribe. I chat about the history behind the mystery as well as first-hand witness accounts every week. But anyway, that is all from me today. Go and get a drink of water. Keep yourself hydrated. It's getting warmer out there, at least for now in the UK. I cannot wait to chat with you more about the morbid, mysterious and macabre. So until next time, sleep safe. Right, I definitely have a cat hair on my eyeball. Thank you, Bean. I suppose sharing is caring, isn't it, girl? There's a long hair, Bean.